Hello and welcome to Food Dangers Untold, episode 2, Underground. And I'm your host always, Elwood, and joining me of course is my glamorous co-host, Emily.
Hello,
Yes.
It's me.
So here we are, obviously continuing our chapter by chapter breakdown of the cult fantasy classic that is Labyrinth. On our first episode we hung out at the park and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, very little going on, but also like a lot. Yeah. But not a lot at all, so.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, we've obviously been introduced to Sarah. We looked at the pre-production for the film, and hopefully you all enjoyed that. And so now we obviously rejoin Sarah, who's running home because she's realised that she's late and she's supposed to be babysitting her younger brother tonight. Mm-hmm. So we see this wonderful dash through the streets of New York
in the pouring rain to David Bowie singing.
Do you know what song it is? Because I wanted to say it's Underground.
It's Underground.
Not the most standout of Bowie songs, it has to be said.
I like it. I'm biased, but I like it. I think it's fun. I think it's like it's a good like pace for running home in the rain, and the lyrics are like, no one can blame you for walking away. It's just fun. It's funky, and I think it really sets the tone nicely.
Yeah. Well, Sarah's home is located in Upper Newark, New York, on the North Broadway, on the riverside of the street between First Avenue and Hook Mountain. So if you want to go and do some movie location stalking, you can do that. Obviously, with our first location, we were in Buckinghamshire, and now we're obviously in New York. And then when we get to our house, we are actually back on Elm Street Studios because it's actually on the back of a studio lot. It's not an actual house that the outside of her family home is. So that was a new piece of information for myself.
Mm-hmm. I've watched so many behind the scenes that I knew that already.
Okay.
There's like scenes of them like with huge hose pipes like making the rain fall down on her outside the house. It's really cool.
I always wanted to be like on a location when they're like doing like rain effects. I just thought that'd be really trippy to be. I also got a lot of porch envy from this scene because we don't have porches in the UK, and I've always wanted to have a house with a porch.
Yeah, they're super cute. You can like sit out on it in your rocking chair with a gun and like yell at the passing by children.
That's the thing.
That's
it's
right?
It's perfect for me now, so I can just yell at the local kids to get the crap off my lawn.
Get the crap off my lawn!
But yeah, I think ever since I saw The Goonies, I've wanted a property with a porch. Mm-hmm. It just seems like the best place to like hang out.
Yeah, and obviously she's completely bone dry while she's like, what the fuck time do you call this, Sarah? And it's like, get out of my way. It's pissing it down.
Yeah, she does. She does give her a little bit of judgment. How it makes her stand in the rain while she judges her.
Makes her stand in the rain while she's like, what time do you call this? And like she makes, not the dog, but it's pouring into the garage. So Merlin can't even, I wanted to call him Nelson then because my friend has a dog that looks very, very similar to Merlin. And his name is Nelson. Oh. But it's not Nelson, it's Merlin. Merlin has to go into the garage, which is so unfair.
It's so bizarre when you look. I'm just looking at the screenshot now of the actual set, and I want to say, is that the Psycho house in the background?
I could not tell you.
I'm just like looking at this because in my head it seemed she was like on a suburban street, and I think it's because we had that shot where she takes the shortcut. Mm-hmm. For the house, which again, because I've not really sort of paid too much attention to this opening scene till now, but she takes the shortcut through, and I was like, oh, that's a house. I remember it being on a suburban street, and then when we look at these shots of it, it seems to be like in a real sort of back alley part. This really nice house that's for some reason there.
Yeah.
But we're introduced here to her stepmother Irene.
Oh, she does have a name.
Yep, she's got her stepmother's called Irene, and her father is Robert.
Nice.
So, and it's here that we also get to enter into the twisted psyche of Sarah, because in Sarah's head, Irene is the wicked stepmother character, even though Irene is probably one of the nicest people.
Is she?
She is. yes, she scolds Sarah for like being late, but yes, if you said that you're supposed to be back by a certain time and someone turns up late, you can understand someone being being a little pissy with you.
Yeah.
But she says that I would like for you to be dating.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing to say. That's not an example of her being a nice stepmom. She's like, I assume you'd tell me if you had a date. I'd like if you had a date. You should have dates at your age. It's like, fuck off. I can do what I want. Like, how dare you be like, I'm very much on Sarah's side here. I do not appreciate that at all as a conversation between two people who barely know each other, and she's trying to get on side, and she's like, I went on dates when I was your age. Well, bully for fucking you, Irene. I want to go to the park and read my stupid plays in fancy dress costume. Like, we're all different. Yeah, let me live. Like, don't come for me because I don't have a boyfriend, because I'm not adhering to your fucking teenage stereotypes. Like, yes, I'm sorry, I'm an hour late home, but you don't need to come for me on that, Back off, Irene. I assume you feel differently.
Yes. I assume that it's like, it's like that she's having the same sort of relationship. When your friend is going for a breakup and they're like in that spate of like, they just want to be alone and write bad poetry, and like, and you're like, come on, come out, let's go bowling. We're pay, and that's what it felt like. A similar conversation. It's sort of like, why don't you? You're a pretty girl. Go and have dates and have a social life instead of spending all your time hanging out with your dog at the park. Apparently it's a different world over in Emily's side, so
yeah, no, I don't appreciate the comments at all. I'm completely on board with Sarah, because she immediately responds with like, I can't do anything right, can I? And it really sums up that, like, look, let me live. I'm my own person. I'm not you. I'm not prom queen. I don't want to go on dates with people. Like, I have friends, maybe, questionable, none of your business. Like, I'm very, very happy and content with the way I pass my own time, and you need to take a step back away from being all up in my grill,
Okay. I'm also introducing this in the theory that I'm going to be pushing for this season, where the events of Labyrinth actually just all take place in Sarah's head. This is a lonely Saturday night, and that she creates this fantasy adventure in her head. So it's kind of like Normal Again on Buffy, where all the events we're seeing are actually inside her head and of her own creation.
Yeah.
So this is my twisted fan theory that I'm going to be pushing. And obviously with her stepmother, like, saying these things, it's all like, I'm slightly concerned. You're like, why don't you go out and do some like normal teenage things instead of doing this? And the only reason we're going out is because the only reason we're asking you to babysit is because we didn't think we thought you'd be in already, hanging around your room and practicing the same line from your play, because apparently you're not very good at memorizing lines.
Hey, sometimes there's just that one line that you just can't get.
So you just obsess over it as you look in your mirror with your paper crown on, applying lipstick and just like brooding away.
Her behaviour genuinely is so normal to me. Like, it's so completely understandable. Nothing she does is weird or out there. Like, she 100% goes in, gets changed, sits down and starts going over her lines again. If she's interested in the theatre and perhaps this is for an audition or even just for fun, you want to get the lines in your head, and sometimes you can't, and she's like going over them in the mirror, and she's like popped a little crown on her head. Like, that's very, like, it's just throwing it on and just playing with her lipstick. Like, I think it's a very, very ordinary thing to do. And like, yeah, like, you asked me to babysit because I enjoy spending my weekends doing whatever I'm doing. So don't then come for me and be like, maybe you should have a social life, Sarah. Well, Irene, maybe you should get a different haircut. I don't know. Like, fuck off. Yeah, not a fan of the stepmother. She's just, she's, I know that she's, I mean, she only gets like 4 lines, poor woman. And they do well to not make her like cruel. But for me, the reason this movie resonated with me so much is because I saw myself in Sarah so much. And I was like, yeah, Irene, shut up. And then you go and practice your lines in your room, which is a perfectly normal thing to do. In terms of it being in her head, Jim Henson came forward literally and said that that's how he sees the movie. It's what he always intended the audience to sort of understand it to be. But I am such a one for being like, she went to the labyrinth. She went to the labyrinth. It happened. She went there. She had a time. Like, I always thought that it was just a really cute, fun touch how her room looked and how it reflected all of these things within the labyrinth. In the same way that the Neverending Story school's attic has a couple of things that reflects what's going on in Fantasia. But, like, we know that it's not in his head there. It's really happening. So I sort of thought the same thing here. However, seeing as we're deep diving, let's dive. David Bowie goes off with Sarah's mom. Like, that is what's happening on her mirror. David Bowie is in all of the pictures with her actor mom, and we can assume that she left the family to be with him. So then the whole labyrinth is her coming to terms with that specifically, as well as agreeing to look after her stepbrother and be okay with the new family unit and perhaps move away from her childhood a bit more. But it doesn't make sense to me, because why would Jareth fall in love with her? And that's her whole thing from the off. If she hates him because he took her mum away from her. Do you know what? It's her fantasy.
Yeah.
So why does she... I don't know. I haven't thought about it much.
Because Sarah emulates so much of her mother. This is why she's has these actor sort of fantasies, because her mother is obviously an actress, and part of this is that she's really embodying the role of being her mother. She sees herself as being the same as her mother in so many ways. She carries across so many of her characteristics. She looks very similar.
How do you know that she carries across many of her characteristics? Like, where is that in the text? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
because she's theatrical.
Right. Okay.
You got to. The fact that they both have this love of the theatre, of of characters, and obviously when we're introduced to Sarah, she's performing her play in the park. So, and in the novelization, she touches upon this, how she idolizes her mum, and you see in the scrapbook, it's not just like mum and then like scratched out, it's mum and heart. And it's also the pictures that she's showing are with her mother and her co-star / lover, who's played by Bowie, which is a really fun sort of Easter egg that you don't really notice it until somebody points it out. And there's more of her on the mirror as well. So she certainly feels no resentment from these signs towards her mother, even though her mother was sort of responsible for the breakup of the family unit. Her father goes off and marries Irene, here played by Shelley Thompson, who her most noteworthy role outside of this is the fact she's in Trailer Park Boys. But yeah, because her father's obviously married Irene, she's got a half brother now with Toby. So the fact that her father's moving on, he's created a new family, and she's unsure of where she sort of fits in to this new family dynamic, even though her stepmother obviously cares about her, even though, judging by your comments, it's a very misguided sort of care. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm older with kids, you kind of side with the parental figures. It's sort of like
completely.
She's just doing her best here.
Yeah,
she didn't choose to have a teenage stepdaughter, but she's doing the best of the situation.
Yeah, and Sarah is quite bratty at the beginning of this movie. I do understand that, but I am like Team Sarah all the way, and every time I watch this movie I'm like, piss off, Irene.
And her father's useless.
Because
her father doesn't even come in her room. He
really
just basically talks to her through the door.
That line where he's like, I'll talk to her. Sarah, are you okay? We were worried about you. And she's like, it's fine, just go. And he's like, all right, bye. And she says, like, you really wanted to talk to me, didn't you? Practically break down the door or whatever. And it's like, it's true. Like, he didn't even make a fucking single ounce of effort for his actual daughter. And so she must feel so isolated and unseen. And obviously, like, you know, she's surrounded by all of this fantastical media in her room that it's very easy to sort of put yourself in a victim's place. And, like, she is a little bit of a victim. Like, clearly the whole thing is a bit stressful for everyone and no one's having a great time or knowing how to navigate their way through it. But with the shit that she'll be reading in her spare time, like, you know for a fact as well that she'll be like, I'm so hard done by. Like, I should just be kidnapped, then they'll be sorry. Or whatever. Yeah. So, like, I get it. I get you, Sarah.
And how she says that whole line, it's sort of like you practically broke down the door. It's a very theatrical sense to it. It's not like, you know, a normal teenager would say it. She's dramatizing the words. She's putting on a performance here because she wants the attention. And that would obviously be another link to obviously her, you know, trying to imitate her mother. Her mother's this Broadway star who's gone off who's sort of run off with her on stage partner who's become a real life partner, as these things often do. From what I read from Scandal Mags, I don't know. Maybe real life's not as fun as these things, but
well, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith broke up Jen and Brad, so
I know, and you know, the on-screen romance between Seth Cohen and Summer screwed up the OC. The fact she's like has all these sort of these moments, and you can tell that she doesn't want to be there, even though the mother's like clearly not in the picture. She still has this high adoration for her mother. But the room, her bedroom itself, though, I think it's up there with my top fantasy rooms.
Oh yeah,
I remember
for sure.
seeing it as a kid, and it's like, you know, that's the bedroom I want.
Yeah, I mean, it was my bedroom. Like, that's what my bedroom looked like. Like, genuinely,
really?
That's what my bedroom looked like. Yeah. Like, just full of fucking junk. Like, just so full of, like, fantasy books and teddy bears and, like, you know, she's got, like, a stegosaurus on her pillow. I have a stegosaurus collection. Like, me and Sarah are one.
Why stegosauruses?
Because they're the best dinosaur. Duh.
Triceratops is the best dinosaur.
No, it's the Stegosaurus.
Okay.
Don't be silly, Elwood. Honestly. Can't get the stuff.
Welcome to Dino Cast.
The fight between the herbivores.
It's like a Stegosaurus. It's slow as shit. It's already got a peanut-sized brain.
Yeah.
And
it's adorable.
whereas Triceratops is sort of like, you know, it's
more aggressive.
A bit more. It's a little more speedy.
Like Sarah from Land Before Time, she was a little bitch. Whereas, like, Stegosauruses are just lovely.
Okay.
And the Triceratops in Jurassic Park is like, ew. It's like, alright. Calm down.
It did eat, you know, berries that shouldn't have been in it.
It's like, alright.
It's been extinct for a number of years. It still doesn't know what to do in life.
Stegosaurus wouldn't have done that. So literally there is so much shit in Sarah's room.
Yeah. I mean, this is again it buys into, you know, the Sarah psychosis theory and the fact that you can look at this room, especially if you've seen the film already, and note all the things that are going to come and play into the story. We've got the usual fantasy books there. You've got Wizard of Oz, Snow White, Where the Wild Things Are, obviously a big key reference there. Alice in Wonderland and Grimm's Fairy Tales, and at the end you even got a little Hoggle statuette.
Yeah, a little Hoggle bookend. And you've got Outside Over There by Maurice Sendak as well, same author, which is about a girl who saves her sister from the goblins. And all of the books are obviously about escaping into another fantasy land. So very, very obvious, like, we're gonna have a coming-of-age dream, okay, everyone? Jump on. Time to come of age in a fantasy world. Woo-woo! Choo-choo! Love the Hoggle bookends. Just, I meant to check before, but yeah, no, like, how long has it been since this movie came out? A long-ass time.
Wow.
Why can't I buy mainstream Hoggle bookends. Why can't I buy them?
Because it's not owned by Disney.
I should be able to buy them.
Because Disney, if it was a Disney property, you could buy any number of tat that they would want to wheel out for this film, and they would charge you a premium price for it as well.
Oh my god, the original one sold in a live auction for entertainment memorabilia for £3,500. Worth it. I'd pay that. Yeah.
But then when we had the whole quest this week to try and find volume 4 of the Return to Labyrinth manga, and that one got pricey. I mean, the Marvel comic book series we also found out about this week goes for a pretty penny as well if you're buying the issues. I mean, they were like 60 quid each. So
yeah, it's insane. Like, I get it, but it's insane. With the Return to the Labyrinth one, it's just annoying because I'm like, I already have 3. I need the 4th. I did borrow the 4th from a friend once. I had to read it so carefully because it was in such pristine condition and I didn't want to break the spine at all. So I was like careful, like I barely like read it because I was like barely opening up the pages just to like see how it ended. And then I immediately gave it back and I was like, thank you so much. Thank you. But yeah, so I just need to find one of them that is not ridiculously overpriced, and you found one for me and I will be ordering it. So whoop whoop, present for me.
Cool.
But yeah, you still can't buy Hoggle bookends. You can buy Labyrinth pajamas, Labyrinth t-shirts, Labyrinth slippers, Labyrinth board games. I know because I do, but I cannot buy Hoggle bookends, which is just lazy. Like, it's right there for the taking, and yet here we are without Hoggle bookends. She's got like a little Labyrinth game next to that.
Yes.
Which is sort of obvious, of course. So many plushies, and like so many, again, why can't, and I think that you could at one point, but they're very rare. Why aren't you mass producing Sarah's version of the creatures from the Labyrinth plushies? There's a Ludo, a Didymus, a Fiery. Like, give them to me.
You also have a statuette of Jareth, which is by a mirror.
Yeah, not a big fan of statuettes, so I wouldn't go for that. Same as the little ball gown lady in the sort of trapped, encased jewellery box thing, music box. Wouldn't go for that. Would rather get the music box from Anastasia than this one, believe it or not. But look at that fucking Fiery. It's got like buttons for eyes. It's adorable. So cute.
We've also got the MC Escher lithograph of Relativity, which is going to play into the big finale.
Yes, so cool. And you've got a Slashing Machine record. It's like a record cover of like a made-up band, but on the front cover it has the cleaner. When they're running from the cleaner.
Oh.
When we get there, you'll
nice.
see. But yeah, so there's that. It's so great.
She's also got a collection of bears, a favourite named Lancelot.
I've read a lot of places on the internet that are like, her favourite is Lancelot. And I'm like, no, it's not her favourite. It's just a bear that she has that has a very specific space that's been stolen. It's funny that they immediately are like, the reason she gets so mad is because it's her favourite bear. It's like, no, I never read it as her favourite bear. It's just, someone's been in my room, someone's taken my stuff. Like, that's unacceptable.
I think the fact it's a teddy bear, and generally if you have an attachment to a stuffed animal of some description, it's usually a teddy bear. So for that to be the particular item of obsession in that moment, it would make sort of sense as it's, this prized possession, even though it obviously has its space on the shelf with these other stuffed animals that you assume would have equal value to it, because they aren't just like put on a shelf. These are specifically boxed little boxes that they sit in.
Yeah. And I like that it's a teddy bear that has nothing to do with the labyrinth. Like, it's not like he steals the fiery doll. Like, because they would be way too on the nose if he, like, stole the Jareth doll and then Jareth stole him. I don't think I'd like this movie as much. But it's just a completely neutral... It's like the kind of bear that you attach a label to and send your child off to the countryside to avoid the bombings from Germany type bear. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can hold it by its arm and it looks very darling.
I think if they could have made like a Ludo doll I think that would have replaced the bear in this scene.
Well, there's a Ludo stuffed toy in the room, and it's gorgeous. It's so cute. But I think,
yes, there is, isn't there? So
I think it'd be too on the nose. I think it would just be like, because I was able to watch this first few rounds and not even consider that it didn't happen, because there's no. The one time she says, just like not to skip ahead, but the one time she says, "I dreamed it all," I thought, is when she's still in the labyrinth. And so I always took that as like, cool, guess that's canon for this is really happening.
I've never even thought about it being in head until we started this project, and then it was sort of like it was really random because we were on the Facebook group for the Movies by Minute people, where everyone likes to share their projects, and everyone was like, people were like saying, "Oh, we'd like to come and guest on the show," and they were obviously posting gifs of "if you need us." And it made me think of the scene. Again, we're skipping ahead here. And it's sort of like, well, geez, these people aren't in the room, and they're like saying, well, if you need us, we're always going to be there. And then it would make, in my head, it's sort of like, oh, of course, because they're in her head, so she can just bring them back. They don't need Jareth to like, gateway the two worlds. So that's the only reason it's come to me since we started this. Because before, it was always like the transition is there because, he spirits her away to the labyrinth. Because he's a magical shapeshifter. But
I think after my like 39th viewing or something, I was like, I understand how I'm meant to take this, but I refuse. And Jim Henson is there, like, obviously it's her psychosis, it's all in her head, and it's a coming of age tale where she has to deal with a bunch of problems, and she's doing it through all of the crap that's in her room. Like, we made that very obvious, and I'm like, I hear you, Jim, but I'm just gonna ignore you. She went to the labyrinth and had a great time. Like, I need it to be real. I need it to be real. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love that it's not on the nose about it being a dream. Like, she doesn't wake up like Dorothy or Alice. She doesn't wake up. And there's not people there, and she's like, you were there, and you, who the hell are you? There's none of that. It's like... she went to the labyrinth. Take it as you want. Feel free to be a bummer about it and say that it's in her head. That's not me coming for you. That's me coming for Jim Henson.
Okay.
Jim. Because
thank you for clearing that up.
Also, rest in peace, Jim Henson. We love you to pieces. But death of the author. Like, that's your intent. That's lovely. She went to the labyrinth in my head. Like, this is no longer yours, Jim. This is mine. And it really happened.
At the end of the day, people are going to read things however they want to read them.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if you tell somebody that, this is the exact thing which has happened, people are always going to go with their version because it still fits in within the world. And I think all fiction is open to interpretation.
Absolutely. And I'm just really thankful that they leave it open enough to be like, if you want to think she genuinely went to this random place with a 13th hour on the clock, you do that, crazy people. But here in Movie Land, it was very clearly a coming-of-age tale where she used a fantasy world to deal with her problems. But we're leaving it open enough for you to do what you want to do. And I'm like, thank you! I will be doing that. Whereas you can't do that with Wizard of Oz. It's very much like, no, that didn't happen.
Wizard of Oz is a lot darker if you read the book.
Or
books, should I say.
Political allegory.
Well, when you watch like the MGM musical and it's sort of like the wonderful, colourful land of Oz, and we're all going off and we're going to sing happy songs and we're all going to solve our problems through good feelings and water, and you read the book and it's just like Dorothy and her buddies butcher their way through the magical land of Oz because they get attacked by crows and the scarecrow is just snapping necks left, right, and centre.
I couldn't. We had the audio tape of it. I got to a point with the boingy heads as they're trying to cross a bridge, and these heads are in the side of a hill, and they're on springs, and they would come out and try and whack them into the ravine. I'd always get to that point, and I'd be like, "Stop! That's enough of that for this evening. Let's get Bramley Hedge back in. Let's get some bread wool."
Yeah, because the Tin Man's axe, that isn't just for show in the book. Mm-hmm. He's quite handy because he's the again, he's like the Scarecrow. He's just busy killing things because they get attacked by this weird beast creature really quickly into their adventure, and he decapitates it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't remember this being in the Judy Garland version.
Judy Garland didn't do that.
But then again, if you really want to wind people up, just say you prefer the version with Oliver Laurel in it.
With who?
Laurel of Laurel and Hardy. It was in the original version of Wizard of Oz.
Nice.
The reason that, they even bothered to put money into a Julie Garland version.
Yeah. And it was nearly like a massive flop or whatever. No, yeah, so I'm really happy that it doesn't do a Wizard of Oz and it leaves it open to interpretation.
Oh, definitely so. And there's so many stories like that where you can like say, oh, it's in somebody's head. I mean, you can look at like The Prisoner, where the whole story is that it's based in his head, and that the changing numbered characters are all basically doctors trying to get him better. And Buffy again was great, just how open that left it with Normal again. It's sort of like, was it all in her head? Mm-hmm. Which I think when we talked about that episode, we decided that no, it wasn't actually in their head.
Like
it's
it
just,
can't be. That would be so reductive.
It's just so clicky. But in a way, it covers for many of the things we don't like the final season or Anya being killed. We can just say, no, that never happened. That's all a fantasy.
Yeah, but then also like women taking control and being super powerful is also a fantasy. And instead they're just screaming and trapped, which, that's why I'm with them. Marnie Nixon or whatever her name is. Being like, no, it really happened. Otherwise, everything that Buffy stands for is a lie.
Yeah. So, I don't know how to respond to that. I never even thought about it in that darkness. But...
Yay! But yeah, what else is in her room? It's such a cute room. I love it.
If we look at the Wikipedia, it says, obviously highlights the fact that there's Dungeons and Dragons in there. Again, classic fantasy. And it plays into the element idea of escapism, where you escape into a fantasy world. There's Ludo, which is that would, I assume that's obviously a reference to her big hairy friend. And obviously, they also claim that Judge Dredd's in there, which Judge Dredd I cannot see tying into this world at all. Neither can I see it in there.
No, it's true.
The lawman of the post-apocalyptic 30th century. No.
No, not quite.
As much as I love Judge Dredd, he is not part of this world.
Yeah. But I love the look of it. I love her wallpaper. I do love the Jareth statue. Like, I'm not a statue person myself, but I do like her Jareth statue. It's very cute.
It's got a real timelessness to this room. When we look at other rooms from this era, they're very sort of dated and very sort of 80s in their look, and you normally can tell it from the posters or
they all have
the use of neon.
But
with
they have
Sarah's,
like Jaws and Alien posters or whatever.
Yeah, with Sarah's, I think because it's so grounded in this sort of fantasy, ethic, and there's posters on the wall for Cats and I wouldn't say Vita.
Yeah.
Which I assume is just obviously a throwback to her Broadway mother. Cats is just a really long time at the theatre.
Are you coming for Cats?
I'm not coming for Cats.
Is you coming for Cats?
I just don't.
I can put my gloves on if you're coming for Cats.
You're gonna put your kitten claws on now.
Yeah, like. I'm gonna Michelle Pfeiffer with whatever the fuck she keeps in her like little sewing box and then puts on the edge of her fingers. I'm gonna do that. It's gonna take me a while because she does it for each individual finger. But if you're coming for Cats, that's what I'm about to go and do. So are you coming for Cats?
I think it's just Andrew Lloyd Webber in general.
Yeah, that's fair. We can come for Andrew Lloyd Webber. Like, I'll allow that.
Whereas
plagiarist.
Well, I haven't got that far, but just
Pachelbel's canon is memory.
When's the last memorable thing that Andrew Lloyd Webber did that wasn't Phantom? Even his attempt to do a sequel to Phantom was awful.
And yes, I cannot even fight you on that. Yes, he's awful. He's just
as I said, he just sits there in his ivory tower, snarking on people when he doesn't get his own way on his reality shows that he organises. I think it was the Sound of Music one when the wrong girl got the part and you could see it was visibly pissed off.
Yeah, it was like, wait, why did I let this happen?
He sits on a throne.
Yeah.
Everyone else has to sit on a crappy chair. He gets a throne.
To be
of course,
fair,
Mr. Theatre can't.
he has been trying. He's been at the forefront of the coronavirus pandemic, trying to get theatres to reopen and trying to get help with the vaccine and be seen taking it and etc. to really get the theatres open. Now, obviously, it's because he has money in it, but you know, it's really lovely to have someone who spoke up so much during the time where a lot of my friends and I were out of work. So that's a good thing about Andrew Lloyd Webber. However, I've run out of stuff.
But yeah, obviously back to Sarah's room. I mean, it's just got this real self-enclosed idea of someone's personal fantasy. It's very self-enclosed, the room is. When you look at the layout, it just envelops you when you're in the room. It doesn't feel like you enter into a room. Every time we go into the room, it just feels like this very sort of, it's almost like this fantasy cocoon she's created for herself.
Yeah.
And it's more just not having to deal with like the outside world. I mean, she doesn't have anyone that we know of in the outside world. She's just very much always by herself. I mean, the only sign of a companion she has is Merlin the dog. And obviously her half brother Toby, who ends our scene tonight with his crying, which again, so children in distress never used to bother me until I had kids, and now it's just every time it just hits me so hard. I just can't cope. It's like the opening of Antichrist. I have to like stop and like take a moment to recompose before I go back. It's just children in peril. I just can't do anymore.
I've heard that a lot. It's a funny old thing. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but there's an episode of Inside Number 9 that feels very drastically changed because the creators have children now, and it doesn't quite make sense thematically with how they end it, because you know that they couldn't bring themselves to do what should have been done because they all have children now, and I'm like, boo, kill the kids.
Yeah, Emily, meanwhile, the childless millennial, compared to myself, the
shut up, Toby.
myself, the grounded Xenial. It provides there's the contrast, but yes, the Toby here played by Brian Froud's son, who would go on to become a animator in his own right.
Yeah, super cute.
So he works at Lakia.
He yeah, so she sees that Lancelot is missing and she storms into Toby's room, and yeah, to me I'm still like, shut up, crying child, you're very annoying, as opposed to like, oh no, all of my parental instincts are kicking in.
We've still got a whole chapter of this next week to look at, which is going to be
Toby
real
just,
fun
like,
for me.
Non-stop crying and then being kidnapped.
And the child has got such an emotional face. It's
he
like,
does.
no,
he
don't.
Really does. It's interesting how Brian Froud said he'd drawn all of these like changeling-esque pictures and illustrations of this child being surrounded by goblins, and then like however many months later his child was born, and genuinely the resemblance between his child and the child in the illustrations is scarily similar. Like, it looks like the pictures came after the child was born. That's how close they look. It's crazy. One thing I'll say about Sarah's bedroom, not enough fairy lights, in that it has 0 fairy lights, and I would have put more fairy lights in. It just feels like it needs some fairy lights, you know what I'm saying? I didn't
That's
know if
more
they
of
were
a
a thing in
90s
the
thing,
80s.
though, isn't it?
Yeah, I get it. It's fine. It's just like, everything can be cured with fairy lights.
I mean, despite, Stranger Things retconning us that people had, like, an abundance of Christmas lights in the 80s, I don't think people actually had, like, Christmas lights and fairy lights in their bedrooms sort of thing. I think that's more like a 90s going into the 2000 thing.
Yeah, very early 2000s. You've got, like, your inflatable chair and your, like, weird, wacky mirror, and then all of your, like, weird shaped fairy lights and your, like, jangly door curtain. I'm just describing my bedroom from my early teenage years, but yeah.
I would expect it to have maybe like a 4-poster single bed. Definitely some sort of like one of those those silk sort of
like mosquito
cloths.
netty type things. It's got a little bit of a curtain. It's got like up against the wall, it's got a little bit of a drape around it, but nothing elaborate. Like, I agree, like, I went out of my way to turn my bed into as much as a, like, Sleeping Beauty encased bed as I could with, like, fabric that I found. And I, like...
Just in case.
Well, just because I was like, this freaking awesome, and this is how everyone should sleep every day of their lives, because you feel like a goddess. Yeah, but 4-poster beds are frightening. I've stayed in York a couple times in the same hotel in the same bed. And it's 4-poster bed, and you're meant to like shut the curtains in because of the cold or whatever, and you just end up being like, I'm gonna get murdered. And
I've always wanted to have
well.
a 4-poster, so.
Yeah, and I really love the idea of it, but like being in an old-fashioned 4-poster bed with like huge velvet, Dickensian drapes that you like across, you're like, this is where I sit and wait to die. Like, I feel very trapped and unsafe now. So it's much better to have the sort of see-throughy, netty, lacy, with rose patterns, sort of white muslin-esque material, just sort of draped into like big curtains that are pulled back onto the 4-poster, as opposed to like big old energy saving murder weapons that are the old-fashioned 4-poster beds. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Anything else that you want to talk about in this chapter, Emily?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything. I think we'll keep coming back to this idea of, is it all a dream? Is it not? With the different things that happen throughout the labyrinth. Can't wait for upcoming scenes. Oh my god. And yeah, you mentioned guests, so hopefully we'll start getting some like guests on soon, which will be really fun and interesting, and I'll get to harass them with my opinions, not just poor Elwood, who's probably like, ah.
No, I'm enjoying myself here. It's great.
Nice. It's not gonna stop.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, if you do want to, share some opinions on the show, or you want to come and hang out, you can always hit us up on the email, which is fruitdangersuntold99@gmail.com, and there you can let us know all your Labyrinth obsessions. If you want to send us some fan fiction or find us some fan fiction, we'd most appreciate that, because we are going to be looking at some fan fiction in coming episodes as part of our bonus episode, the fan fiction theatre.
Whoop, whoop.
So that's all to obviously come up on the horizon, so to speak. But you can obviously as well follow us on Instagram, and we are on Twitter as well. Just look for Dangers Untold and you will find us. Instagram in particular, we've got a lot of fun bits of Emily's collection being shown. Fun little memes and fan art.
Even scraped the surface of Emily's Labyrinth collection. Like, we have barely begun.
So you've got all that to look forward to. This obviously brings us into tonight's chapter. When we obviously go into our next chapter, we are finally introduced to the goblin hordes as the fantasy starts to creep into the reality. But that's obviously coming up on our next episode. But so thank you for listening tonight. Thank you to my co-host Emily.
Woo! Thank you.
And as I said, if you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button to wherever you happen to listen to us. Maybe leave us a review.
Give us a 5-star review. We deserve it.
Let your friends know that we exist. Yes. And spam your enemies.
Yeah.
To help us spread the word of the show, as we'd love to reach out to the larger Labyrinth community out there.
Hell yeah. We know it exists.
We've certainly seen some great fan stuff out there, and we'd like to bring more of that in. So
yes, I want to be sponsored by Truffle Shuffle, so I don't have to spend money in that store anymore.
But again, thank you as always for listening, and we will be back very soon with our next chapter of our breakdown of Labyrinth. So hopefully you can join us for that.
Woo.
But until then, good night.
Good night.